And we are back. What's
Good.
happening, Josh?
Not much. It's a beautiful day out there. It's going to be
It is until tomorrow.
till tomorrow. Exactly. Gotta love Colorado.
Not out of the woods yet. Special interview today. Lawyer Chris Parks of Chris Parks Law. If you've been in an accident, Chris is here to answer your questions. Chris has represented Fortune 500 companies, but his passion is helping people who have been injured in accidents, including all types of vehicle accidents, work injuries, slip and falls, nursing home litigation, and explosions and catastrophic injuries. He is licensed in Colorado, Texas, and Louisiana, and has appeared before both state and federal courts in all three states. He's been practicing injury law for 37 years and has collected well in excess of $100 million for his clients. Welcome, Chris Parks.
Thank you, Kev.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
the
here.
introduction.
It's quite the resume.
Yeah, well, it sounds good to me.
Not the average ambulance chaser, I tell you.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'd rather just stop with what Kev just said and move on. But,
All right. Well,
no,
go ahead.
I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana, originally. And,
Okay.
grew up there. Went to school down in Texas at University of Texas in Austin. Went to Tulane Law School, and after 3 years at Tulane, started practicing law in New Orleans, and so got my license there and studied in Louisiana. Some people might know it's civil law. It's different than every other state in the country.
Mhm.
So I spent 3 years at Tulane studying civil law, including working on the civil law dictionary, and then I had the bright idea to move to Texas. So I had to learn Texas law, and I was there for 20 years. Had a fairly large firm and represented a lot of people down there, and then moved up to Boulder, thinking I was going to move up here and relax and enjoy the Colorado and our beautiful weather today.
Of course.
And after about 6 years of not finding people to play golf with, I went back to practicing law. So I've been practicing law up here coming up on 8 years, and office in Boulder, but I work all over the state. I still do cases in Louisiana and Texas.
Well, if you ever need a golfing buddy, reach out to me. I can definitely help out with that.
Sounds good. Yeah, you know, a golfing buddy's available when he doesn't know what day it is.
Mhm.
He's really retired.
Love it. Wanted to kind of get started off. So, I mean, there's a lot of lawyers out there. Why you? Why should someone call you? What is your specialty here?
You know, great question. Experience. That's it. The and the only way I can really explain that, let me just give me a moment.
Sure.
So I've done a lot of really, really large cases. I'm proud of them. They were super difficult. You learn a lot from doing those. In 1990, there was a huge oil spill in Galveston Bay, first one in the Gulf in years. And I handled that case on behalf of hundreds of shrimpers and crabbers and oystermen. I was appointed by the federal judge in charge of the case. All the claims were put together in one federal court in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I was liaison counsel for everybody on the plaintiff's side, meaning I had to talk with the judge and with the defense representatives as well for this big company in the ship called the Chinoosa that had spilled the oil. And later on, there was a Norplant case. Norplant was this birth control device that it was like 6 little matchsticks underneath the skin. And nationwide, there was a huge outpouring of these lawsuits right after this started because it didn't work well. And 40,000 women ended up filing cases. In a big case like that, you have what's called a multi-district litigation, where a special court in charge of all the federal courts says, we're not going to have these cases all over the country. We're going to consolidate them in one place. Well, I was in Beaumont, Texas at the time when I filed my cases, and we won out of every other location in the country. It was brought to our court in front of our judge. And this was the first and only MDL ever in East Texas. And I was liaison counsel on that. And when 100 lawyers were in the courtroom, the Judge Shell, the first thing he would say is Mr. Parks. And I had to get up and get started.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kinds of experiences that you don't learn in law school, and you sure don't learn working for somebody else. You have to, know how to handle a big case and where to direct your efforts and how to go about that. I've done a lot of other interesting cases. Represented an astronaut against Home Depot. I could go on and on with the big cases I've handled. The BP explosion in 2005 killed 15 people.
Yeah, I did want to ask actually about that. 15 people killed, it's 180 injured, $200 million in property loss. That's nuts. And I have some questions about that. But first, I want to kind of rewind it a little bit because I've always been fascinated, especially with this birth control thing, the 40,000 women, where it's a national case. What is the process of bringing that down to just one court? And you said you won. So, I mean, what was that?
Well, let me, rather than talking about the victory, let's talk about the process real quick.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
you know, if you think about it, let's say that it's your wife buys this birth control device because it's recommended by her doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And her complaints are, hey, I have headaches all the time now. I'm losing my hair. I'm constantly on my period and I don't feel like having sex. It's working as a birth control device, but not the way it was advertised. And that's exactly what the complaint was. Right. And so I got the complaint from someone and I was interviewed in the local paper and I mentioned it. And the next day we had to install another phone line at our office. Literally, people were calling saying the same thing over and over again. And I'm thinking, this is not right. I mean,
right, something's wrong here.
Did all these people just hear this and decide to lie? And it just broke out all across the country. Everyone was doing this. So the problem is you always hear about class actions and everybody says, oh, he's a class action lawyer. No, not in a medical case. A class action would be every ticket sold by an airlines in a 2-year period had an extra 50-cent fee. Mm-hmm. And everybody that bought those tickets needs to be contacted and redeemed for all the tickets they bought, 50 cents at a piece.
Right.
But nobody would file a lawsuit over that.
No.
but that's called commonality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a medical case, you have causation questions. Was this woman already losing her hair before? Or, you know, did she ever sleep with a husband? You know, I mean, is this really a class action case? And the answer is no. Mm-hmm. But you still had tens of thousands of women that had the problem, that had called a lawyer. These suits are being filed all over the place. Why should every federal judge in the country have to sit there and listen to these cases when at least you could have commonality in the liability? So the question is, hey, did they warn? Did they know about this? Did they test? Mm-hmm. It turns out all of the Dalcon Shield and lots of the prior cases that have involved birth control had a lot of things in common. And I won't go into the details, but all the lawyers that had worked on those cases for the 20 years before Norplant ended up on our committee as well, working on these cases. And they all said the same thing. We're going to get the answer. It's going to be in the documents. It's going to be between legal and medical. And the legal documents internal are going to be saying to medical, hey, we can't do this. We better test. Mm-hmm. And they are not going to have done that. So it was litigated. It was very complex. The other side had their arguments. But at the end of the day, there was a resolution. It wasn't a huge verdict. It wasn't some substantial win, but there was a resolution of all those cases. And they were all handled in Beaumont, Texas, in front of Judge Schell in the Eastern District of Federal Court down there.
And I take it down there, especially for like a medical case, something like that, it really just comes down to, were they informed as to these possible?
So that's a really great question, Joshua. So if you think about it, we're getting cases from all over the country. So we had Leaf Cabraser, a huge San Francisco firm, and they had lots of cases out in California. And we had lawyers from Philadelphia, Arnold Levin. We had lawyers in New York. We had lawyers in Chicago. Everything is now in Beaumont. So you can't just apply the law of Beaumont. Mm-hmm. What you have to, or Texas, what you have to ask is, what's the common issue? And really it comes down to discovery. So they sent every document that they had to New Orleans, and we sent teams of lawyers down to New Orleans. And, you know, weeks at a time, you got 5 guys in an office the size of your studio going through documents, looking for hot docs, trying to find stuff. And this is in the age before, we're just getting to where computers were working to where you could send an email as opposed to a fax.
So this is all faxes back then.
Yeah,
wow.
It was. But, and what I want to say real quick is, when you have lawyers like that, imagine the egos involved. I mean, I'm in Beaumont, Texas. I get the case, but Leaf Cabraser is the biggest, class action law firm in the country, and out of Michigan, we've got people, and we've got Santa Fe lawyers, and everyone's in this room, and we're trying to argue who's in charge.
Mhm.
And literally, I was so young, I grew a beard, and I was wearing glasses that were clear, so I would look older. and once I got the appointment, both on the steering committee and the executive steering committee, was 3 of us, and the liaison counsel job in front of Judge Shell every time we had a hearing. I shaved my beard because I hated it, and I took my glasses off, and I was at a hearing, and literally, this guy from New Orleans dressed me down. He just couldn't believe I was like 35 years old. And my only excuse was I had been tested, and even though I was 35, I read on a 60-year-old level. So that was my argument to him.
I mentioned the BP refinery explosion. And you've handled big cases like this one before in Texas. How do you prove liability? How do you even begin a case like that BP one?
So, what goes on behind the scenes in these cases is cool. I've represented companies and insurance companies when they're at fault, and I've represented injured people, like in the BP case. BP is a perfect example. So, by the way, it was $2.5 billion in liabilities from that case.
Wow.
It was 15 killed and 180 injured. If you Wikipedia the BP explosion, Texas City, 2005, they used to list it as one of the largest industrial accidents in the last 50 years. Now they have a little bit of a different spin on it. They say the explosion was the world's costliest refinery accident. Now, I don't know about that, but here's how you handle it. And let me start. Actually, the more interesting is what starts with them. Imagine we are BP, the 3 of us, right? So Kev's the president, and you're the plant manager, and I'm the lawyer. Okay.
I'll go with that. All right.
Okay. Thanks. How long do you think it took after the explosion for you to call Kev and Kev to call me? It was instantaneous, right? I mean, if you were down there as the plant manager and your office shook and you realized that we were just trying to restart the plant and we just obliterated a trailer full of people, you immediately called Kev, right? And the first thing Kev called, because he's the CEO and he's running not just BP America and BP Products and BP England, he's a player. He's the equivalent of Rex Tillerson, who was Secretary of the State under the first Trump administration, right? He's a big deal. He called me while you were still on the phone, okay? And he's yelling to his secretary or associates or whoever's in his office to get 3 other lawyers on the phone as well. And he's probably had a conference call before the dust had started to settle out of the plant.
I'm sure, yeah.
So he has to. It's his job. The board's going to want to know what happened. Everyone's going to want to know what happened. And as a CEO, you know that you're a generalist, right? So you're going to marshal your assets. Who's the best engineer in the world on something like this? Who's the best architect for that will know this plant? Who's going to get me a 3D dimensional thing and let me understand it? And who's the best PR in Texas for this to get ahead of the news before it breaks at 5:30 today? And we're already getting calls from CBS. What are we going to do about that? So that's what's going on over there. Well, here's the sad thing. What's going on the dead people's side? Their family is starting to hear about something. They know their dad or their mom's down there or their husband. They don't know anything, and they're not going to know anything for hours.
Right.
So everybody's standing by. They might drive out to the plant. It's surrounded by firefighters. Nobody knows what to do. Nobody has any way of getting any information. They won't even release information yet. So that's what happened. One of my clients was an asbestos. I had about 1,000 asbestos clients. And this guy used to drive from Louisiana to Houston to see a heart doctor. And I was in Port Arthur, Texas, which if you look on a globe, Louisiana, Texas, and the Gulf of Mexico meet. Okay, that's Port Arthur. It's the greatest duck hunting in the world, but it's it's also a big refinery spot. So this guy used to come by. He would leave I-10 on the way from his house near Lake Charles to Houston. He would come down to see me. He would never announce himself. He was in his 80s. He could barely hear. And I'd be in the middle of something or meeting with somebody or, doing an interview. And it was like, he's here and he wants to have a cup of coffee. And I'd always go out and I'd sit in the conference room with him. We have a cup of coffee and we talk about his cancer. And anyway, he called me and he was like, hey, my son and daughter-in-law were just killed at the BP. And can you help me? So that's how I got involved.
Okay.
And it takes a while. Most people that have been, say your husband or wife is in the hospital, first you want to know, who can I trust? And then you kind of have to make an approach to a lawyer, and you're not sure. I mean, someone flies up in an airplane trying to impress you, or they've got a dinky office and stains on their shirt and they seem old. I mean, you got to vet who you're going to hire.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole process for the injured folks takes a couple of days for them to find a lawyer or think about it. And then as soon as the lawyers get hired, they start calling their experts, their investigators. And then you find out, oh, well, Randy's also handling one of these cases. And so you call him. And about 2 weeks after, the plaintiff lawyers are starting to catch up and they're meeting and having their own counsels and voting who's going to be in charge. And they're all writing checks because they're about to hire the best, the very best experts that they can get on their side. So anyway, that's the process. And it happens every time there's a catastrophic something that hits the news.
Mm-hmm.
And does politics play a role in these massive cases? I mean, you went from the South to Texas to Boulder. I mean, you may as well moved to another country as far as politics. As
very astute question, So think about it. I'm in Texas when George Bush is governor. Okay. And he said on the news, and he made it very public when he was governor, that we don't want plaintiff lawyers, people that are representing injured people, to have the kind of power that they have. And the reason is plaintiff lawyers donate to political campaigns because the politics plays a big role in the law, right? And whatever law is passed, even in one legislative session, can change things. Right here in Colorado, we've just increased the caps on damages. And that is a huge thing that has happened just recently. It's through the efforts of the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. And yes, politics plays a role, but the way it plays a role here is egos.
Yeah.
Because, I'm trying to deal with Turner Branch, a world famous lawyer from Santa Fe. And he's about the nicest person you would ever meet. But you talk about sharp. I mean, he's a genius. So the weird thing is, first of all, you have to have a huge ego to be in this business or stand up in front of a jury. But then you get in a group of equal people and you have to know not just how to give orders in case you're in charge and you win the case. And you're going to decide who's going to New Orleans to look at the documents. But you also have to be able to take orders, because if Turner's going to do a hearing and he needs some research done and he assigns it to 4 different law firms and you don't get your part done, we've got a huge, huge issue when Turner gets up there and he's trying to make this argument and Williams and Conley, one of the greatest firms in Washington, is on the other side. We got to be ready. So politics plays a big role in a lot of different ways. And I will say this, my partner was a state senator for 30 years in Texas. His name was Carl Parker. And Carl, he was a heavy Democrat. I had been a Republican when I was in New Orleans. I helped get a guy elected to Congress. I was his campaign chairman. I moved to Texas, start working for my old boss, the senator, Carl Parker. And, I'd been doing plaintiff's work, representing injured people, maybe 6 months when I realized you really can't be a Republican and be, wrapped up in both sides of this. You have to pick one. And so I really started my journey into sort of the Democratic side, the more liberal side of politics there. And it was moving to Boulder. I felt like I'd found my people. It was
Good.
so nice. And the funny thing is, you get out of the bubble in Boulder and you drive to 25 and you're in Weld County and it's hardcore Republican. And there's oil and gas folks there, just like you have in Texas. So I like being on both sides. All my friends in Shreveport, Louisiana are mostly not just Republican, but MAGA Republican. But we can still have a discussion.
Right. Once again, if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Christopher Parks, with Chris Parks Law. And if you're watching on our social media, you can comment, you can leave questions, and scrolling on the bottom is the website, chrisparkslaw.com. I want to go back to what you kind of mentioned a little earlier, whereas choosing a lawyer, you got this guy flying in all fancy, then you got the stained shirt, the office is a mess. This is kind of a two-part question. One, these are two questions from our listeners. If someone is looking for a lawyer for an injury case, what is the first step in finding a lawyer who is a right fit versus the type of injury case?
Versus the type of injury case. So not just someone that does car wrecks, but who's a good person? Is that the question?
That's what I believe here. It just says, what is the first step in finding a lawyer who is the right fit versus the type of injury case? So I think
Well, so I'll just say this. For anyone that's within the sound of our voices right now, if you're in Colorado and you have an accident of any type and you're wondering who to hire, I mean this sincerely. You can call me at the office. I'm a member of the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. I like making a good fit. If you have a case that I think that my friend Kevin is going to be the best lawyer for, I'll give you Kevin's name. If you're going to be down in Pueblo and it doesn't make any sense for you to drive up to Denver, I'll try to give you someone down in Pueblo. A lot of these people are not going to be the advertising lawyers. And I'll explain that if you want. But a lot of them are going to be people like me that have been there and done that and have done a lot of things in the past, but they don't want to be in a big firm anymore. They would rather, they like what they do, right? It's fun to represent someone that needs some help and you get them a great result. And they're in your cell phone for the rest of your life and they call you around Christmas. It's very rewarding. So I think the thing to do is look for someone that you can trust. Ask your friends. Go back to the way we did it before the internet. Anybody that's been in an accident, just ask around. Try to find a lawyer that they can relate to, and it could be in a big firm. Okay, it might be Kyle Bacchus is your next door neighbor, and man, he's awesome. Okay, and I really like Kyle, but it's really about trust. And if you can find someone that knows someone, that's probably the safest thing you could do in general. Short of that, call somebody that will actually answer a question, no charge, no pressure. And I do this all day long.
Right.
Happy to give you a name.
And that's a big thing. Somebody that'll actually talk to you without
that
billing you for just
that answers the phone. I will say almost everyone that does what I do, that's a plaintiff lawyer, they will answer your questions because they don't bill. Because I get paid maybe 20 times a year when I settle a case.
Gotcha.
So people are happy to talk to you.
We do have another question on social media that came through, kind of goes after this. What proactive steps should individuals take immediately after an accident to strengthen any potential personal injury claims? And I want to actually add to that steps that people can take that would weaken these claims as well.
Okay. Well, the thing to weaken a case would be to call a huge advertising lawyer from your car seat and have the ambulance driver or attendant hear you talking to a lawyer while you're on the phone.
That makes sense.
It doesn't. And look, you got plenty of time. You just got in a wreck.
Right.
So the very first thing to do is check on the other person. And I mean that sincerely. I mean, if you're hurt, don't move. But if you cause the wreck, get out and see how the other person is. Just be a human about it.
Right.
Let's say that what happened to you is what happens 20 times a day. You're minding your own business. You're driving through an intersection. Someone hits you and it's their fault. You clearly had the green light, or you're just waiting for the light to change and someone rams you from behind.
Mhm.
Kind of assess where you are physically. Much more important that you're okay. And if you have any damage, just sit tight. Somebody will probably be with you. Maybe call the police if you need to do that. If you're okay to get out, again, check on the other person. Pull out your phone and take some pictures. You don't have to be nasty to the other person, but every picture you take is going to help.
Mhm.
Every time I start a trial, I want to make sure I at least have pictures that are orienting, right? So I might have a Google Map screenshot so that people will remember, where is 63rd again? You know,
They can see the actual scene
Yeah,
and imagine it.
exactly. They
Right.
can kind of get a handle on what we're talking about. Because if you just start talking about he was coming north and he turned left, it's like that, you know, you're just lost.
Right.
So, and then I'm going to bring them down. And as I bring them down, I'd like to orient them not just to what you say happened, you know. So Kev is totally at fault and Josh was totally innocent.
That
right?
sounds about right.
Yeah. So we'll switch that in a minute, Kev.
Well,
But
you
it-
made me president already, so I guess it was my turn.
Well, there you go. But you know, and then as we zoom in, though, we want to see the damage to the vehicle.
Right.
Were there skid marks? You know, just what's going on out there. So taking a few pictures is a good idea. Exchanging information with the other side. Do call the police. It's almost always a good idea. Let them come out and see what's going on.
Mhm.
Be honest. This is not the time to be cute or to think you're going to win a bunch of money or do anything like that. And then after that, if you're hurting, only if you're hurting, but if you're hurting, go see a doctor. I mean, go to the emergency room if you need to. A lot of people leave an accident, say they're fine, and then wake up the next morning and when they first wake up, they don't understand why they can't lift their head.
Mm.
It's really common to have a whiplash injury.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know how much your head weighs, but probably 8 pounds. It's stacked on top of a couple of bones that are the size of your thumb. And, you know, you can get a whiplash and it doesn't hurt that bad because you're excited. But next morning it hurts pretty bad.
Mhm.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. And one quick question that I just thought of. A lot of times in Colorado, you'll hear and you'll see get into an accident, move everything to the side, get out of the way. Is that the correct thing? Because, you know, I'm thinking in my head, taking pictures, kind of a scene, something that you can visualize. Well, if you get into an accident, move everything.
So I think if there was a police officer here, he would say, don't do that. Right. I mean, if it's a pretty bad accident, I mean, everything is a judgment call. But
Mhm.
let's say that you're on Arapahoe near the studio where we are. And this is so Arapahoe in southern part of Denver, and you're headed up to 25. You get in an accident there, you're blocking traffic. Well, if it's a really bad accident, someone's hurt in the car, absolutely don't move it.
Mhm.
Usually the first thing that you hear, my clients always say, yeah, someone drove by and said, I just called the police or I called 911. So I think if you're in a busy area, you should stay still
Okay.
and wait for the police.
Gotcha. Before I continue, there's actually one other question, and kind of like this one. Just with the whole personal injury claims and legal process, what are some of the common misconceptions people have about personal injury claims and the legal process involved?
That everybody's an ambulance chaser.
Mhm.
Really, and it's true. And you know, a lot of people are ambulance chasers. I mean, there's a lot of sleazeballs out there on both sides of the docket.
Mhm.
I've worked with lawyers that represent insurance companies, and they bill by the hour. And I've seen people that weren't in the office bill hours to the insurance company because they were thinking about a case. Okay. So, you know, you're not immune in any business that there's going to be creeps.
Right.
But here's another way for someone to find a good lawyer. You want to find a good lawyer? Let's say you're out on the Eastern Plains and you don't know who to call. Anybody. Look for lawyer, whatever town you're in, Yuma, and put in Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. You're not going to be a member of the trial lawyers unless you're dedicated to doing what you should be doing, which is gather the facts, represent someone if they're being honest and if they're hurt, try to get fair justice. Don't try to exaggerate or bullshit your way into something just for the money.
Right.
So
I like that. Talking about those big cases that you have, how does your experience in larger cases influence what you do for the smaller ones, like a car wreck that we were just talking about?
I think it makes a lot of difference. If you it's a Sun Tzu scene, the Art of War.
Right.
You've got this old warrior on horseback and this young warrior on horseback, and they're looking across the field, and there's 100,000 warriors on horseback, and they're about to go clash. And the old warrior says to the young one, he's relax. He goes, you know what you're doing. You've been trained for this.
Mm-hmm.
The only issue you have is where do you direct your efforts? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what happens. If you've done a lot of big cases, if you're the person paying the bills, so you as president, Joshua, you've got to make this place work. Okay. If you're a lawyer and you have employees and you have, clients and deposition costs and court cases and all the things that go along with your responsibility. And if you've been in battle, 60, 70 times, what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to charge into a line of 100,000 mounted warriors, right? But the only thing that matters is that you don't get killed with a sword, when you first start. So a big case or a little case, the first thing you want to know is how am I going to get the facts? Okay. Let's say there was a fire at a shipyard and it's 500 miles away from my office. I mean, before you walk out the door, if you've signed a contract with me, I'm calling an investigator down there, wherever there is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably getting a plane ticket to get on an airplane. I want to go there. I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to have an investigator. If I need to, I'm going to file a TRO, a temporary restraining order, that stops the shipyard from being able to clean things up. I want to get the best photographer I can get. I want to get 2 or 3 experts on shipyard injuries. I want to get a fire guy. Excuse me. I mean, that makes a difference. And so bring that all the way down to a small car wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom just got in a wreck. She's not even sure if she's hurt. What do you do? Excuse me, I had to take a drink.
No, of course.
And the answer is same thing. I want to know everything that happened. So it happened on, again, Arapahoe and 25 in Denver. I'm going to drive down here. I'm going to take a look at the scene. I'm going to get all the photographs that I can get. I'm going to get the police report, maybe talk to the officer, talk to the ambulance folks. Every single thing you can do. You want to get every document, every witness, every photograph. It's an ongoing job. You want to get all the medical records.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is if you're in a law firm that advertises and you're a lawyer, you got out of law school 2 years ago, and this is your first job with this big firm. Everything you do is based on a calendar. So you're one of 100 lawyers or 20 lawyers. You get assigned a case that we just signed up. They just want you to get the medical records for this person because they're injured, and they give you 20 days to do it. And after that, you have 5 days to get a demand letter out to the insurance company for the amount of money you want settled for. And then you have another 20 days, and I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah.
Another 20 days that you got to get the money in the door. Okay. There's a big difference between I'm on a calendar and I have a quota and everything's governed by that. And that's how I get my bonus or keep my job.
Mm-hmm.
To, I like this guy, Kev is nice.
He's all right.
And I believe him,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to help him. Okay. So I'm going to stop everything I'm doing. I'm going to drive down to that intersection. I'm going to check it out. And then I'm going to swing by his house and talk to him again and make sure I understand what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I like, if it were me and it was Kevin and he called me and let's say I'm in another state and Kev calls me, or we're talking to his brother out in LA. That's an easier thing to say. I'm going to try to find someone in LA that can help him. And it's not going to be someone that's in a big firm that just got out of law school. It's going to be someone that's done a lot of this, been battle hardened, knows what he's doing, and wants to help individual people. That's why he's doing it.
Gotcha. And we had another question, mainly the Colorado Trial Lawyers Association. That is, in your opinion, the best place to go if you are looking for. It's not a Google search that you're going to want to do. And the website is actually ctlanet.org.
Well, let me be clear.
Sure.
In any town, if you were looking for someone to represent you as an injured person,
Mm-hmm.
if you added your town to attorney and then Colorado Trial Lawyers Association, or CTLA,
Mm-hmm.
you're likely to find someone in your town that's a member of CTLA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because anyone can say they do personal injury, right? I mean, I could have a law firm that has never done a personal injury case in history.
But they're legally allowed to.
They're allowed to say, we'll take a personal injury case.
Right. Gotcha.
And, as long as they do their job competently and get the right information and get the right help and that they're licensed to practice law, they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in CTLA, you go to their seminars, you have a chance to interact on different sites with other lawyers. You're doing that for a reason. And I'll give you another example. If you're, stop right there. But yeah, CTLA is a great organization. If you're in Texas, TTLA, and if you're in Louisiana, it's Louisiana Trial Lawyers. And I've been a member of all three. They're all excellent. It's like-minded people that do this job, that enjoy doing the job, and generally, the best lawyers are absolutely going to be in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying every one of them is going to be perfect, but from cradle to grave, you're going to have CTLA plaintiff lawyers.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about that, how do you stay, because you specialize in injury, how do you stay current in your field, which I take it you want some, but you don't want the legal team that's just like, oh, let's try this type of case. This is what you specialize in. So how do you stay current today with everything in the personal injury?
Well, so let me clarify. I appreciate the question.
Sure.
And I don't mean any offense, but
no,
to use the word specialize in Louisiana or Texas is a no-no unless you're board certified in a particular specialty.
Okay.
So let's just say that I advertise and what I do all the time is personal injury.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not claiming that I'm necessarily board certified in personal injury in Colorado, but this is all I've done for 37 years. And I love doing this type of work. Okay.
Right.
So how do you stay current, I guess, is the thrust of your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First thing, it's great to go see a jury trial once in a while or try a case. And if you're doing that and you're sitting in on someone's closing statement, it really helps you. I mean, it sharpens your sword a little bit. You need to go to seminars. It's a requirement to be a lawyer in Colorado that you get a certain number of hours every year in continuing legal education. So the seminars that you go to, you make sure that they have to do with personal injury or that they're sponsored by CTLA.
Mm-hmm.
You get special reporters. There's a particular reporter that I can get that only deals with every trial that they can find that went to a verdict in every county in Colorado in the last 2 weeks. Okay. So handy thing to have if you're in our business. If you're in the insurance side of it, there's lots of great insurance magazines that you can get. There's some that only go to owners of insurance businesses. But there's some that are made for just the insurance defense industry, the lawyers. So, you keep up with everything you can, but you also are doing it every day, so you don't get stale. You're talking to clients. And I guess that's the answer.
I like it. You've been doing this for a long time. What is the most rewarding part of this job for you?
Easy answer. So my cell phone's sitting right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how many contacts I have, but I bet you I have 90% of every client I've ever represented is in my contacts in that cell phone. I can call a guy that I represented in a burn case on a ship platform anytime as a reference. If I'm talking to someone else, his name's John, and I'll just call John up. Hey man, where are you? And you got a second? I'm talking to somebody, and John will tell him all about what happened in our case. You know, I've been doing this 38 years now. I think I represented John 34 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I met John, 3 lawyers had turned down his case. He was living above a garage, and he had been burned over his entire body. He looked like Nick Nolte, if you remember Nick Nolte when we were young.
Yeah.
So Nick Nolte was, for those that don't know, was just a good-looking movie star and, you know, sort of a man's man.
Yeah.
And John, the back of his legs, like his right, he wouldn't mind me talking about this, his right calf had been burned away. Okay. His fingers were attached when he got to the emergency room. They air flighted him to Houston from Beaumont. From Orange, Texas. His fingers were all attached, but every time he went into surgery, they were debriding the burn. Okay. And he would come out with bandages on his fingers, and he didn't want them to unwrap the fingers because that would show him what was left. And so he had these successive surgeries, and eventually it came down to his left hand has no fingers, and he's got a little bit of a thumb, and his right hand, just almost as bad, but he's got a trigger finger and let's see, about half of the rest of the fingers on that hand and a little bit of a thumb. So John, the 3 lawyers that had turned him down did so for good reason. I mean, it didn't appear there was any way to win the case. And I was working within about 5 miles of where this accident had happened. So I go out to the shipyard and talk my way in the front gate. And there was something strange. John had been hired the same day he was injured. First day on the job. His job was to work in a storeroom, which is basically you're giving out masks and gloves, and then at the end of the shift, you bring them back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only they were short people on this rig, and so they put him on this oil rig that is normally offshore. I mean, deep water oil rig. But they bring those things in from time to time, especially the floaters, and they put them in a shipyard and they redo everything.
Mm-hmm.
So John was hired. It's about 10 in the morning, beautiful day like this, like 65, low humidity, which never happens in South Louisiana. And he's on top of this rig. He's got to be 100 feet or more up on top of this rig. And it's jacked down into the mud of the Sabine River on the border of Texas and Louisiana, which is the main reason they called me, because I was licensed in both and they'd already gone through 3 good lawyers. And anyway, it's a weird set of facts. It turned out there's a thing called 905B in the Longshoremen and Harbor Workers Act, which is a form of workers' compensation that John was under. And 905B provided the only possible exception that I could find that we could file a lawsuit under. And I was so young, I made John read 100 cases that I copied off of these books to show him that only 2 of these cases even had liability under 905B. That's how hard it was going to be. And I was like, look, dude, I'll take the case, but this is going to be really hard. Mm-hmm. And a year later, he drove home from Houston with his wife, Tribby, and he tells his story. He told it at a Christmas party at my house one time, and everybody started crying. They pulled in McDonald's, and they had just settled this case for John still gets checks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have enough money in their car to buy a hamburger at McDonald's the night that they were driving home from the deal. But that's huge. I mean, and it almost brings tears to my eyes right now. And, John, 35 years later, he's doing well. He was able to raise his granddaughter, help his daughter out because of this. his granddaughter has a granddaughter. We stay in touch. I'm a lucky man to be doing this. Joshua, we were talking, you're a lucky guy to be able to do this all day long, right? You're putting in 15-hour days running a radio station, but it's cool. It's what you like to do. And I'm surrounded by all these great posters that I was telling my wife about. It's like, this is an absolute rock and roll, like just cool, And that's how I feel about my job. I mean, this is fun. This would be like being asked to produce a movie, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you just got to put it together. And I plan to do this for a long time. And that's most injury lawyers feel that way. And look, last week I was at the CTLA annual conference and I met a bunch of guys. And yesterday I had lunch with the president, ex-president of CTLA. And every one of these lawyers, we all enjoy what we do. This is really fun. It's an honor to represent people.
Yeah, it's like you'd much rather work 15-hour days than 8 hours doing something else because you love it so much.
Something you love.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Got a couple more questions actually that came in from social media. And if you are listening out there or you're watching out there, you can type in a question in our comment section and we can try to get to it. This one comes from our YouTube, basically stating, I've seen advertisements that saw a lawyer won't take any money unless he wins my case. Is this a normal arrangement or some kind of special deal? How much should I expect to pay up front?
Normal arrangement. Every state I'm licensed in, every state I've worked cases in, which is about 15 different states, everyone does it the same way. It doesn't make any sense to pay a lawyer, especially if you're injured, by the hour. Okay. If I was doing an oil and gas title opinion and you were Exxon, you'd be paying me $600 an hour to write up a title opinion. And it's important and it's worth it. And, the title opinion on the oil well that we're talking about may produce, millions and millions of dollars over the time. And we already know it's producing. So this is a totally different thing. You're going to take a speculative, bet that some lawyer can get you more money than you can get on your own. And to do that, almost every lawyer charges around a third. I mean, the joke is it's easy for lawyers that do what I do to multiply by 33 1/3%, right? Because that's what you do all the time. But usually you expect to pay about a third. And there's an ad here in Denver where the head of the law firm says, did you know that on average lawyers make people that are represented are paid 3.5 times more than people that aren't represented in a car wreck? Well, that's actually correct. And if you do a Google search independently, don't take my word for it, but look up that little statistic. Is that true? It actually started with an insurance consortium that they were studying it. And they discovered, wow, we're paying 3 times as much or 3.5 times as much to people that are represented than to people that aren't. And the business practice, therefore, is don't let them get represented.
Don't let them get a lawyer.
And the way they say it is you control the client. Okay. So if all three of us are adjusters and we're all, getting together and getting fired up for the day, you be really nice to that client. They're injured, you have sympathy, you talk to them, but you don't let them get a lawyer. And one of the tricks is you keep asking for more information. Keep saying really nice things, but I need this, or I need that, or I didn't get this, or you're claiming you emailed it, but I didn't see it. The longer you can draw it out, the more desperate they're going to start to become. And most people do not want to fight. They just want what's fair.
Right.
And so if I'm an insurance person and I'm playing this game, I'm not saying that they all do, but a lot of them do, because it's their job. The longer I can keep you talking to me and not represented, the more frustrated you're going to get that this thing isn't over with yet. And maybe I can get this case settled with you for less than it's worth or less than I have in what's called my reserves. So I think the question is that common? Should I expect that? Yes. You don't want to pay a lawyer like me by the hour. Most experienced lawyers are going to, it would cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour to hire them. You don't want to do that.
Right. And I've also seen in commercials where, they do say, do not accept or sign anything with an insurance company until you have talked to an attorney. Is that valid?
Well, no.
Okay.
Look, you're hit from behind. You're hurt. You see a doctor, and 2 weeks later, you're feeling okay, and you don't think there's anything in the future.
Mhm.
You're perfectly entitled to settle that case if you want to. The
Mhm.
insurance company would love to settle it with you.
Mhm.
Why screw with a lawyer? I mean, it really depends on if you want to do it or not.
Gotcha.
But I turn down people all the time that don't need a lawyer, and I usually list out what they need to do.
Mhm.
I mean, literally on the phone, I'm like, "You got something to write with? I'm going to give you about 10 things I want you to do, and then call me back later and see where you are."
Mhm.
But you really don't need to hire a lawyer for this. That's not what I'm going to do if I'm spending $100,000 a month on TV ads. I'm going to hoover up everybody that calls and that's injured, and I'm going to try to get my money back for my spend and my overhead and all the lawyers that are working for me. But in general, it depends on if you're really hurt.
Mhm.
Okay. If you are, if Kev calls me and he is, I know Kev and he's trying to be tough and he's like, my neck's hurting and it's been hurting for a couple of weeks, but I think I'm okay. I'm going to tell him, cut that shit out, go see a neck doctor,
Mhm.
go see a neurologist, see your regular doctor, get a full exam before you do that. This is not time to tough it out.
Right.
Find out if you're hurt. And if you're hurt, get some good help.
And speaking about when you said, later on, oh, it's still feeling this way. Oh, no, it's feeling okay. This is a question that came through on one of our social media sites. In a motor vehicle accident, is there a time frame in which someone can still file a lawsuit against the person who caused the accident?
Yes.
There is a time frame.
There's a time frame. So in every state, Texas, Louisiana, and Colorado, where I'm licensed, and every other state, there's going to be a thing called a statute of limitations.
Mhm.
And that applies to every action you can file. So
Every action.
every action. I
Okay.
mean, because what happens is, let's say that you have a breach of contract. I can't think of a simple example, but just it's a breach of contract. You signed a contract with somebody, they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
You can't wait 25 years and then decide I'm going to file a
Right.
lawsuit.
Right.
You don't want that to happen. Witnesses they lose their memory, they move on, documents get shredded. So every case has a statute of limitations. I can't think of one that doesn't. And we're talking about civil cases, or cases for money damages because someone wronged someone else,
Mhm.
or was negligent and hurt somebody else. So yeah, in Louisiana, sometimes you're dealing with a year, literally a year, a statute of
Just a
limitations.
year.
Just a year.
Wow.
But it would depend on the case. And so
Mhm.
I say sometimes you're dealing with that.
Gotcha.
But you can have a really short statute of limitations. If you're dealing with a government entity, which, that would sound like maybe a police car, or maybe a sidewalk owned by a government, or something that happened in a government building. You've got a short statute of limitations. It's actually a notice provision that you have to give notice that you've been injured. Okay. That varies in every state. But every case has a statute, and the best thing to do is very simple. Don't waste time.
Mhm.
First of all, are you injured? Get treatment. Second, get advice, or at least Google, a lawyer, and call somebody and say, what do you think is the statute here? Or how long do I have? And then put that on your calendar. If you're going to, if you want to wait and see how you do, my advice would be find out ASAP what the statute is. How long do you have to wait? And be careful in Colorado, if it involves a hospital, it could be a government entity, even though it's a hospital. Same with in Texas. Different things are governments or arms of the state, and it's just important to get good advice from a lawyer on the specific. So this is what happened. This is where I was. This is the nature of the accident. do you think that there's any shorter statute, or do you think the regular statute that I just looked up on Google applies? What's my deadline?
Mhm.
But yeah, absolutely, that matters, and it's probably one of the most important things you can do after an accident, and after you're on your way to healing, is to find out how long do you have.
Gotcha. We've been throwing the information on the bottom of the screen if you are watching. If you are listening on the radio, this is Christopher Parks with Chris Parks Law. It is www.chrisparkslaw.com, 720-805-1193. One final thought that came through one of our social media listeners. And I am curious about this without going into great detail. Just a nice snapshot. What separates great lawyers from good lawyers in your field?
Man, that's a great question. Let me answer it this way. I've represented insurance companies. Okay. When the person on the other side is good. There's an expression from a novel from years ago: a gun recognizes another gun. Okay. And it's a novel called Run, Rabbit, Run. And they're talking about, it's the opening scene of the novel. And this guy used to play basketball. He's the star of the book.
Mm.
And he's walking by a pickup basketball game in downtown New York. And this guy shoots and the ball goes wide and it lands in his hands. And he passes it to a guy who turns around and drains it. And he immediately knows that the star of the novel immediately knows that that's the guy. So he stays around and he watches for a while and he has a little conversation with the guy. And that's where this expression comes from: a gun recognizes another gun.
Mm.
So if you've been practicing law for 30 years or 10 years, even if you're not that good, you at least know what good is, right? I mean, if you're playing guitar, when you're in the presence of a master,
Yeah.
right? And I know you guys are musicians. I am not. But, law is the same way. Every once in a while you walk into a courtroom or you hear someone giving a presentation and you're just like, damn, I've never heard it put that way, but that's a really great way to make that argument. Okay. When you're on the insurance side, you're already talking to the adjuster that's been handling the claim. And they're already telling you what this lawyer's like.
Mm-hmm.
Either just a total jerk or very well prepared or whatever. And usually your reputation's way ahead of you anyway. And so you see people take perfectly good cases and screw them up. You see people take shit cases and and turn them into, just a beautifully produced suit that you never expected was going to be, you're going to have to pay that much money on.
Mm.
Okay. This is not surgery, right? If you're a great orthopedic, you go in, you've got a body in front of you, you got to move a leg around, you're going to cut, you're a mechanic, but it's just you and the body.
Mm.
Okay. This is battle. Okay. This is, you're a good lawyer. Somebody's going to be on the other side. They're either going to be your equal, your better, or your worse. But I promise you, the good lawyer wins. And the better lawyer, the better the outcome. So if Kev calls me and he's in Texas, I'll tell you exactly what happened 2 days ago. Sorry, yesterday. I got a call. I've got to keep this very vague. The injured person is paralyzed from the shoulders down. Okay. That's a big case.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how it happened, that's a big case. They explained to me what happened. I'm like, oh man, that's going to be, I don't know how you're going to prove that, but it's in Dallas and I'm not in Dallas, and you need to call someone good down there. And so I'm looking at my contacts and I'm going through like 4 great lawyers. One of them, unfortunately, is retired. And I just sort of had this little epiphany. I was like, no, this is a huge case. You need the best lawyer in Texas. I gave him a name of a guy in Houston. And there's no question in my mind that his firm will look into this case. They will investigate everything. They will turn over every rock. They will get every document. They will spend thousands of dollars investigating this case. And they know that it may be a complete zero because there's no way to prove anything went wrong. It's just an unfortunate accident. This woman's, paralyzed from the shoulders down for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
But man, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You get injured, you need to get the best lawyer you can get.
Wow.
Real quick, what's the most unusual case you've ever handled?
So, Kev, this is going to sound kind of silly, but I'll tell you, I had a client, Mr. Cheatham. This is years ago. He's long since died. And his granddaughter had been accused by a store owner of stealing a bag of chocolate chip cookies. And it was so important to him. I mean, he was like freaking out. And I'd been representing him for a year and a half on this car wreck case. And we're getting ready to go to court. And so it turns out that she's being, like she wants to fight it. And he wants to fight it on her behalf. So it wasn't a criminal case, though, because it's being brought by the store owner, right? I don't remember how this happened, but Port Arthur, Texas, the old courthouse is downtown. It's probably, been torn down at this point. I tried a case in front of a judge in Port Arthur, Texas, over the theft of a bag of cookies
Wow.
for a kid. And believe me, even telling the story, I'm like, how could this be true? But I'm absolutely positive it happened because a friend of mine who worked for the Justice Department was in town. And we were going to go do an inspection of a levee. And he was so fired up that I was doing this little dinky trial that he came down there and watched it with me. And we thought we had the case won. And the granddaughter on the stand, after I've skewered the man that owns the store and the judge is like telling me to back off and case is over kind of thing. The granddaughter on the stand admits to stealing the cookies, but she had some reason for stealing. And so it was a very unusual case. Not a win, but it was interesting enough that another lawyer wanted to come watch it.
Those better have been some really good cookies. I mean, I don't know, Mrs. Fields or something really good. Well, Christopher, thank you very much for coming in. We absolutely love it. And for people who are on the radio, if you're watching, of course, you have all the information below on the screen. But if you're listening on the radio, it's Chris Parks with Chris Parks Law, and it's chrisparkslaw.com, 720-805-1193. And I take it that is the best way to get a hold of you if somebody has some questions.
It is, Joshua. And listen, and first of all, thank you. This has been wonderful. Everyone that's listening, I want you to know, if you ever get a chance to come to the studio, look around. It is so cool. There's a Pink Floyd poster right behind Kev right now. But the takeaway should be this. Maybe, just maybe 3 weeks from now, you're going to have a problem or know someone that has a problem. You're going to wish that you could go back and find this. Man, if you're driving or if you're at your office, wherever you are, I know your phone's next to you. We all keep them right next to it. Pick up your phone and go into contacts and push that little add button and put in Chris Parks, and it's 10 letters, 5 each, CHRISPARKS, and put in that number, 720-805-1193. Or my website is chrisparkslaw.com. I promise you, if you call that number, someone will call you back. Don't leave a message on my voicemail at my office, but just push a button to get someone to answer the phone, or send me an email at cparks@chrisparkslaw.com. And I will get back with you. I mean, I really like doing this. The lawyer that I work with, my partner, she loves doing it. Our paralegal loves doing it. And if we can't help you, we will find someone that can. And I'm not desperate for cases. I'm serious about. I do like the job. It's a lot of fun. I can imagine watching you guys perform. You probably really enjoy a good set, right? And that's what it's about. So yeah, give me a call if you need anything. But you guys are awesome. I really appreciate this.
You as well. I feel like we could go on another hour. It's so informative. I've learned so much. So we really appreciate having you.
Thank
And
you.
you are certainly welcome back.
Come back anytime.
All right.
If something comes up in the news and y'all want someone to talk
Yeah,
to,
that's kind of what I was thinking.
I'll drive down.
Our legal expert.
I don't know about that. I work hard and I'm honest, but I don't know about the expertise.
Well, thank you again very much. It's just been such a pleasure on our end. We're going to return everybody to our regular broadcasted schedule, and stay tuned for Kev on the Radio, which is our afternoon mix of music on K4CO. If you did catch the last part of this interview, you can always go to either Facebook K4CO Radio or YouTube K4CO Radio, and you can watch the entire interview from start to finish. So thank you again, Chris. It's been absolutely an honor.
Thanks, Joshua. You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Coming up at 2:00 and